And welcome to the DoneJS contributors meeting. Today is Friday, February 24th, 2017. And today we're joined by the core team and a couple of other people. My name is Chasen, and we'll go through the core team. So say hello, David.
Morning. I have my video off. Morning.
Hey, good morning. Justin?
I've been tickled by feathers. Feathers.js.
Kevin?
Which Kevin? This Kevin? The other Kevin?
You're the only Kevin today.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
You're the only
Kevin number one today.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Hey, everybody.
Hello. Matthew?
I wonder what good gifts will come of this meeting. Hello.
I like it. And Prashant?
Hey, hi everyone.
Cool. Hello. And we're also joined by Ilya today. Hey, how's it going? All right, so let's go through everyone's status, what we worked on this past week, and what we plan on working in the coming week. I'll go first and we'll go alphabetical. So this past week, Kevin and I worked on a SYN issue with Firefox. And that's linked in the forum post. And we got a new version of SYN out that fixes that. I also worked on figuring out how to get the dist, the distributed files in the tagged release that we have on GitHub and our npm releases. That's not working out of the box with the DoneJS plugin generator right now. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit. I added it as a topic. And then there was some stuff related to updating and adding some contribution guides for a couple of projects. So next week, we have an intern who is joining the open source team at Batovi. So I think that'll be a little bit of my focus, along with scheduling meetups and conferences, and next week will be the turn of the month, so we'll have a community update blog post too. So that's my status. David, you want to go?
I'm just going to be quick. I just made a CanJS 2.329 release, which had, I think, a fix that is pretty useful. So if you're still on 2.3, you should probably update.
Awesome. I saw that on our releases, but it doesn't have, like on GitHub, it doesn't have the release info. Would you mind adding that to the?
I don't think that's unfortunately not going to work anymore because the release changelog generator is breaking because of the 3.0 versions. So I can have a look and see if I can still generate it, but it's not going to work out of the box anymore, unfortunately, because of the 3.0 ones.
Okay,
so,
yeah, even if it's just some notes on a PR that was merged or what have you, that would be helpful. Cool, and do you have anything for next week that you're working on?
Not specifically, whatever will come up.
Cool, thanks. Justin.
So for this week, I mostly prepared for the Hack Illinois hackathon that's this weekend that Matthew and I are doing. We're going to be working on making DoneJS apps streamable, which is what I'm going to talk about as a topic. I also helped a few minor issues and bugs within CanJS. And like there's some Ajax things going on that Ilya's worked on. Also, we found this bug in IE and older versions of Chrome where if you're listening to the key up event on an input and change the value, no change event will actually be fired. It's a pretty nasty bug, one that even jQuery is just like threw their hands up and said we're not going to even try to fix it. So maybe we'll have like a weird, like I don't know if we're going to fix it in CanJS's core, but we might like release like a little patch plugin if other people encounter this bug because it's kind of nasty. But the fixes are really nasty too, so that's why jQuery didn't do it. Which annoys me, but that's another topic. Like I do feel like jQuery, that's exactly the kinds of things it should be working hard to fix.
Yeah.
So for next week, I'm going to return to all of the stuff that like I've been needing to get done for like a month now. I want to publish the file navigation guide that I built. I want to get out the built to last article, which is all about how to write maintainable code and kind of like what we do in CanJS, but how to like other projects and organizations can do that, or things to watch out for, and then finally return to the Bitcentive guide. And I'll be very happy when all that's done.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Kevin.
All right, so I worked on a couple different things. So late last Friday, we did the Firefox 5101 fix, which is for number inputs and other non-text inputs. Basically, in Firefox, it would return null instead of undef, like deep within the SYN code, and that was breaking some stuff. So Jason and I fixed that. That also unblocked us to release the touch events and pointer events fix. And then in addition to that, this morning I submitted a change for modifier keys. So there's a couple problems with some of the modifier keys, Control, Alt, and Meta. And so that fix should be in. I want to write some additional tests around that, so I'll be working on that this upcoming week. And in the bug report, there's also some stuff talking about insert and caps lock also not working. I need to investigate those a little bit more. So there are no tests for that in the latest submission. I also, we discovered a problem in IE where sometimes it will do a double backspace if you hit backspace. So I'm going to take a look at that. And then if I have any additional time after all that other stuff, adding touch and pointer events to stuff like double click and maybe drag drop too. So that's me.
Sweet. Sounds great. Matthew.
Hey, so last week we were working on getting DoneJS 1.0 out. I think we have all of the critical issues done. Pretty much just releasing everything is what we'll do. I wasn't working on that this week. Kevin's been out this week, the other Kevin. And when he gets back next week, I think we'll probably just release it, hopefully. We'll do some sanity check going through place mode or DoneJS chat one more time just to be super, super sure that there aren't any bugs. Otherwise, yes, working on streaming.
Awesome. Sounds good. And we can have Robert is the guy who's joining our team next week, so we can have him go through all of the guides and stuff that we have for the 1.0 release as a sanity check too. So
yeah,
cool. Prashant.
Yeah, sure. So I was let me share my screen. So I was working on this can stash bindings issue. This is the defect that I picked up this week, and the problem here is that the $check binding it's not working correctly for the radio groups. So I kind of I tried investigating this issue, and I have a test case that that fails. So this is the test case that I have written that fails, but I'm not able to find out what is causing this issue. In particular, I'm not able to determine what happens after this line. So if I check the radio button, if I set its check property to true, update the scope attributes, the define map attributes. So I guess I'll be reviewing the code a few more times to get a better understanding of how this works, and I'll continue working on that.
Yeah, one thing to guide you real quick, Prashant, is I'm not sure that setting checked in all browsers actually will fire a change event, which would be what's needed for the two-way binding to even act. So if you programmatically set checked, it doesn't mean that a changed event is going to actually fire, and the live binding might pick that up. The other thing to be aware of is in CanUtil, there's the attrs, And a lot of stuff happens in there around this. Like actually the majority of like any behavior, like anything that's like specific to a radio element is actually going to happen in there and not in the two-way bindings. A lot of times people like think it's a problem with two-way bindings, but it's really a problem with can util attr. So check that out as well in your guidance. And of course, if you need help, just send a calendar invite to me or anybody else, and we can help guide you through it.
Sure, I'll do that.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Sweet. I think that's it for statuses. Does anyone have anything that they want to bring up before we move on to topics that are in the forum post? Nope. Okay, cool. Justin, the floor is yours to talk about streamable apps.
Awesome. So I'm pretty excited about this. Hopefully you all will be too, or I'm not doing a good job of explaining myself. So if your head hasn't exploded by the end of this with anticipation for what's gonna come out of this weekend, let me know, and I'll just keep explaining myself until you feel that way. So in short, what we're trying to do is make a complete streaming solution for DoneJS. Make it by streaming, I mean it has the ability to, as records are kind of produced from the database, it has the ability in both server-side rendering and normal JavaScript loading to handle streams of data instead of one big dump of data. So let me give an example of this. So in the client, it's kind of the easiest. It's the easiest to make work and the easiest to conceptualize. So you can imagine a CanJS application where you say, hey, I want to get a list of to-dos. This is going to do that. And it's going to hit a ND, which is new line delimited JSON service. Let me make my page a little bit bigger here. And what's going to happen is the server is going to make a database request, and as the database spits out rows, we're going to start adding items to this observable data, which if you know CanJS means we'll like add LIs as they come. Which in the client, it's pretty nice. If you're loading like 1,000 records, you would just start seeing them stream in instead of, which is actually some of the biggest performance benefits is that the database, normally on the server, you're waiting until all of your records are complete before you then serialize it into JSON and send that whole blob back, and the whole blob gets converted to observable objects and then inserted into the page, right? So it's like these chunks. There's a chunk of time here that you're kind of waiting for everything to happen, and then there's another chunk of time that you're waiting for everything here to happen. With streaming, it's like as the database sends things back, we're going to be able to add elements to the page much, much quicker. So this is really nice in the client, but and I think we're going to be able to get this done this weekend, probably no problem. But what the big thing that we're doing is we want to make this work with server-side rendering. We actually have some crazy ideas about server-side rendering, which I can talk about in a second too. But our first approach is, I guess, the safer. It's going to give us the optimal in performance with maybe a little bit of cost on the user's end to make sure that things are going to work right. So we have our server-side rendering server, which sometimes is linked to the services server. Actually, I just forgot. Why am I doing this when I have? I actually have the source presentation that I made this from. Where is it? Actually, hopefully I didn't lose it. Okay, I don't know where it is right now. I really hope I did not close it. Okay, I'll have to find it later. Anyways, the big thing that we're doing is we're going to be server-side rendering a stash template, which will make the same ND. This hasn't been updated to say that it's a new line delimited JSON service request, and that will hit the database, and it'll start setting back, the streaming the data. And what we're going to do is we're building a serializer for this template so that it can kind of walk through the template and know what parts are still streaming. So which parts, maybe the title finishes right away, and we know we can send the title back. But once we get to the to-dos, this each here, we're going to see that, parts of it inside are still streaming, and as each LI is done, we can serialize that and send that back. So we've got a whole bunch of, there's a walkthrough of exactly how it's going to work. We've got all these different parts that we've outlined that are going to be part of it. We're going to be using, you have to use fetch to get streaming. As I said, ND-JSON is basically like every JSON object is on its own line. And one thing we're going to make is something that can take a fetch stream of just raw bytes, basically, and convert that to a stream of JavaScript objects, right? So that's one little project. Another project is to make that into a use that to make that into a can connect behavior. So that, you could just get your to-dos. This will actually resolve immediately, but your to-dos will have items added to them over time. Another thing that we're working on is a streaming DOM serializer. Effectively, you can make your virtual document. You can start serializing it, but you get a stream as parts of that DOM are being serialized. It knows, just giving you parts of the DOM that are done and complete. And this is where the we need to associate for this serializer to work. We need to know, like I mentioned, which parts of the DOM are still doing stuff. The mechanism we're going to use for that in this initial release, this is where I said it's kind of, for the most part, I think users won't have to know this unless they're doing stuff. Like a lot of the complexity of what I'm going to talk about here can be hidden within CanJS, but at a lowest level, if you're doing mutations and you want to say like, hey, I'm mutating something in the future, so anything that might read this still has asynchronous behavior, so don't serialize that part of the DOM yet. This is that mechanism where effectively, let's say I had a list of to-dos and I'm going to be updating them in the future. I can essentially get a token or a callback to say, hey, I haven't updated this yet. Hold on, real quick. Actually, I know I've got it updated in the right spot in the actual. Let me show it here. Or let me do it. Let me do this one. What the users would do is they would say, hey, gosh, I didn't update it here either. Sorry. It's not, it should be length, not prop. Okay. This is a good review for me. Okay, so let's say I was going to add a to-do sometime in the future. I can basically say, hey, the length of this map is going to change in the future, and anything that depends on that, do not serialize, essentially. And then once I've made my modifications, I can call this callback saying that anything that cares about the map length is done. And the reason for this is because, in a lot of CanJS applications, you might have a compute that depends on map length. Like, let's say you wanted to figure out the total number. This should be to-dos length, of course. You might have something that is marking only the completed to-dos, or you want half the length of to-dos, and you derive, given one value like the length, that might be derived in a lot of different ways, and we need to be able to trace that through the source value through a lot of transformations. So this is actually possible. So if I had computes that were cared about the to-dos length, like it would the same, we would be able to know that those computes fundamentally care about this, and any live binding that was dealing with those computes would be delayed and the streaming wouldn't be streamed. So there's that part of that. So that's that. We're also going to need a version of CanView Live that work kind of hybrids this CAN observation zone part with the streaming DOM serializer. It's going to have to kind of communicate those two arenas. And then we're going to have to make a demo app that puts it all together. I'm really, really hoping that David in particular's mind is blown, and he's going to be like, man, I really want to update this issue to just basically write out how to do it in feathers so that we can have the people just read it and just do the ND JSON, which he kind of already sent to me, but it wasn't enough for me to understand. They were just like, you could see how, or it was maybe enough for me to understand, not enough for probably the depth that we need it in. But that'd be really nice.
How can we get the stream from the database?
So databases, they kind of give you events. At least Postgres gives you like.
I think it's different depending on the database.
It depends on the database, but there's the standard kind of Postgres adapter that has like you do a query, it gives you your query object. It has an on, which gives you every record. So then you need access to the underlying response.write, and then you basically just serialize the record to JSON and send it with a new line character after it.
I guess we can probably convert that to a stream itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could convert it to a stream itself. Yeah. So that would be really cool, because then maybe we could also get a feathers plugin or something out of this too. And at the end, I don't think I'm doubtful at the end of the weekend we're gonna have all of this worked out, but we'll have. My guess is that we will have. I'd be really happy if we get. I doubt we'll be able to get the live binding utilities, but if we could get like the stream transformer, the CAN connect behavior, the streaming DOM serializer, this would be a real win to me. And then a demo app that maybe is built on feathers that at least we can show it in the client so that we can go to a page and just like the client will just, you go to the page, your JavaScript code has to load, but then it makes its request and you just see like a bunch of LIs just coming in as the database is streaming them out. And then we show, oh, this is what it would look like if you loaded 1,000 records, the other way. And show a big difference. I think that'll be really cool. So now let's talk about the really crazy idea. Shall we, Matthew?
Yeah.
All right. So here's a crazy idea that Matthew and I had, which Matthew went a little bit, and we could talk about this. But the idea. So one issue with the way that we're doing it is that. You kind of have to know, like this, we're making people register their modifications that they're going to make in the future. Now, like I said, CanJS, a lot of this can be encapsulated because we know, hey, if someone loaded a promise, there's something going to happen in the future. Someone has an async getter, something's going to happen in the future. We know when in the typical places people are doing asynchronous behavior, and we know how to associate what state change they're going to be making with that. But we can't know it everywhere. And that stinks. But one thing that we could do.
Well, okay. We could scale back on our ambitions there a little bit. That would also make that easier on the users a little bit. What I mean by that, it is just not supporting list.length as a special thing. If
well,
we just
no matter what, if the users are doing to-do.promise, or sorry, just like using our models, then it should just work. Like, I don't know what you mean.
I mean,
Like, there's
well,
nothing-
I mean that like so the problem the reason why we need can observation zone is because any particular property could be waiting on something, maybe, right? So we have to be able to track that.
Yes.
But if we make it clear, like within the templating layer, that the template understands promises and understands streams, so you can wait on something by wrapping inside of a promise.
Yes, we could do that, but my point was to the users there's going to be no difference, because if they did a promise or they did like a stream thing, we're going to handle that transparently to them anyways. They're not going to deal with any of this stuff.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully.
Certainly, I think certainly
Well,
they won't have to.
I mean, but you remember we talked about like if they do something in a knit, there are definitely cases where
but then,
they might do
the
stuff.
same problem would exist then, presumably. Anyways,
Okay.
I don't want to get into that
Okay.
much nuance about the to make something that like handles almost any situation. Like, either there are no special types. Who cares about special types or any kind of tokens or things like that? One thing we could do, which would be crazy, is so consider a template like this where you have your to-dos and you have your UL, and you're going to go through every to-do and you're going to write out its name. But then at the end of this, you also have like something like, well, when user promise, this user comes back, you're going to write the user's name out. And someone set timeout is doing some kind of mutation of the DOM. You know, every 10 milliseconds they're, oh, this is supposed to call set timeout again, whatever. One thing we could do is, because CanJS, we know all the mutations the DOM is making, what we could do is just render the template, what we know, right? Serialize everything, the entire HTML, and return that, but don't finish, and just start kind of injecting script tags that make the subsequent changes. So we would actually stream out because we know what we would do is zones know all asynchronous behavior. So we know when everything is done. And what we could do is just say like, well, okay, we just noticed that to-do's push just happened, and then we added an li, we saw that mutation, so we're going to write out a script tag with that mutation that makes that exact same change. This is not exactly server-side rendering, as Matthew has pointed out. This is more of like a fast boot. But we could do that. And we've also, so Matthew's also done an experiment with doing it so that we could do mutation observers here. So we write out elements, so we could be listening to mutation observers and making those mutations. It's a crazy idea that allows us to kind of completely avoid well, it might even have some other small benefits, is that like, well, the user would actually kind of see the app as it loads if they kind of went to it as a JavaScript app in the client. It would actually boot like that. Like, you would see by in the page, and then you would start seeing LIs being inserted before it, almost as if JavaScript was like running, which it is kind of running, but it's not like the JavaScript app has loaded itself. Does that, what I just said, make sense? Because if not, I can explain it. But it's a pretty crazy idea. It's like one of those ideas.
The too long didn't read version is that it is not doing server-side rendering. Instead, it's streaming a set of instructions to render the application. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, that's a really good way of saying it, Matthew. As we're building the DOM in the server, we will send the same mutations that we made. We will stream those out as part of the HTML response.
And the reason for doing that is because we can't otherwise guarantee that if we stream the HTML output server-side rendered, that it won't be changed, or it won't be mutated by something that's later in the script? Or-
Yes, unless you're doing, you have the other kind of solution that we talked about, which is, you have this kind of, you force the person to kind of label in one way or another which parts are pending, which parts are still like going to affect the final result of the page. This would allow you to say, well, we don't care, we're rendering whatever we have right away, and then we're adding to the rendering instructions on how to update the page. And there's potentially there's cool things you could do, which is like, well, you could start loading your JavaScript right away, and then once JavaScript kind of came online, then you could turn that off. You could, I don't know how you would tell the server about it, but potentially there's a way to say, hey, server, I'm done. Stop giving me stuff. This actually maybe gets a little bit even easier if you have HTTP2 with server push, because it might be possible, because HTTP2, you can basically send out your initial HTML complete, right? Then now we're going to send it out complete, but we're going to package with it a like todos.html instructions that this page would immediately fetch and use that to start making any modifications until JavaScript has loaded, and then switch over.
What do you mean until JavaScript is loaded?
Well, so presumably you would have your external JavaScript resources, and they take time to load compared to the like little bit of JavaScript that it takes to run the instructions.
Basically, until your app boots up. Your app's going to boot up, and we're building the DOM, and then it's like, okay, my app's booted up. I'm going to switch over to that somehow so that it's able to start where you left off, I guess is the idea.
Yeah.
What would we do for apps that want to support users without JavaScript?
They would then they would wait for everything. Then they just wait like this SSR works now.
Right. I
Wait
guess
till the full zone has completed. And then you don't do this fast boot for them.
Okay. How
What he's saying is,
trying to think through how do you know which like
You
the
just
server
wouldn't use
doesn't
this.
know.
Yeah, you probably just wouldn't use it then.
Okay. So
If
it's the application developer's choice to
Yeah.
use it or not.
I mean, you
Gotcha.
could. I mean, what I would probably do if there was that scenario is I would probably have like a link in the immediately rendered HTML. So if like someone went to like Gmail or something and they wanted to use Gmail without the client, but this was working, I would have a link just to say like, hey, don't have JavaScript enabled. Like you could probably embed that or have your no script have that, the no script option, which only shows up, I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about, but there's actually like a no script HTML tag where you can put in like content. I would render that and say, go to this link. And then all that is the same application, but with server-side rendering saying, waiting for everything.
Yeah, I feel like this streaming solution is like a very advanced, would only be useful in very particular scenarios.
I think it's the opposite, right? Like how many apps depend on JavaScript? And it would be useful in every one of those that like force JavaScript, which is like every app that we've written, I think.
Yeah, but I feel like the more simple case of being able to SSR the content on the server and then push out that HTML, I feel like that is probably a good solution for most cases, and it makes more sense for developers have to do something extra to have that other solution where it's sending out script tags that are mutating the DOM.
But I don't think that's I mean, if you look at historically the types of apps that we've worked on, very few need server-side rendering. Most are client apps. So then what you would do is The apps that don't need server-side rendering, it's server-side rendering is a pure, for the most part, the way that we've even approached server-side rendering from the DoneJS perspective is it's a performance tool. So if it's a performance tool and you don't really care about the people who don't have JavaScript running, then go for the thing that's going to give you the best performance.
Wouldn't the solution where the HTML is being rendered on the server and spit out, wouldn't that be faster in most cases than sending the script tags that mutate the DOM?
It depends on what you consider faster, and it also depends. So like, there's a lot of overhead that we're going to have to do to have the streaming HTML parser work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's going to be all these promises involved. There's going to be all of this like can observation walking and stuff like that. That adds more complexity than this other kind of, I don't know, what did we call it? Streamy scripts or something, Matthew? There was like streamy scripts and like the DOM asynchronous serializer. Those are the kind of the two different options. Streaming scripts would get an initial render out like, arguably the operations there are going to be faster. The initial rendering is probably going to be just about as quick. I think they would be performance-wise. Performance-wise, I actually don't know if there would be much of a difference. But simplicity-wise on the users, potentially there could be a big difference.
Well, you mean developers. You don't mean users.
Sorry, developers.
Yeah.
Yeah, developers.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of skeptical about the performance of it. To me, it's an experiment. It's a potential experiment.
Yeah, it's an experiment. But here's also one thing that's also really important that I think what we're building right now, like, is once we start getting to the whole interaction between CanView Live, the streamer, can zone observation, or can observation zone, that's a lot of complexity. The scripty streams it's basically what we've already done to make web server or web worker rendering work. It's much more simple code, much more simple conceptually with how everything's working, and that's to me an intriguing benefit. There's just less code we have to maintain.
Yeah, we can't support people who are server-side rendering and want to be able to have the page used without JavaScript, though. And the streaming script solution, I presume, is going to perform worse, just because you have to send all of the script tags over the wire and mutate the DOM instead of.
But the DOM side the server side is going to be slower. That's what I'm.
The server side for which solution is going to be slower?
For the server side solution is going to be slower for the DOM async DOM serializer.
Why is that? I'm sorry if I just.
I tried to explain it already, but let me try again, because the async scripty streams, like, we just let Stash run its normal course, and every mutation it makes, we're just collecting a log of those and just flushing those.
Mm-hmm.
Like, almost nothing needs to be done, right? For the zone, like the can zone observation, that's like basically its own form of compute that's going to have to like walk through the dependency graph of a compute, bind on all of like any observables that are there, and calculate like and basically you can read through the instructions on like how the implementation. There's a lot there. It's like basically it's a separate layer of computes that we already have on top of the whole application. And on top of that, then there's this serializer that's going to have to like listen to the promise, wait till this whole thing is like says, okay, go done. Okay, now keep going. Okay, done. It just, I feel like there's going to be a lot of promises, a lot of communication overhead going on in there, where there's like no communication overhead. It's like imperative code that's just like make a DOM mutation, side log it in this thing, and start sending out those instructions.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so what's the plan? What are you guys implementing?
Well, we're not gonna build. I mean, I think that the scripty streams is I don't think it's a viable thing until web workers and HTTP or till HTTP2 push comes out. Really, Matthew did a little bit more. I think we should do a little bit of experimentation because it's a really cool idea. But I think the other one is the safer bet for sure.
Yeah,
and
gotcha.
doable now.
Cool.
Yeah, Ilya.
Yeah, good question. So this stream of instructions to build the DOM. So do we need this stream till the point when the browser's application is fully set up?
No, that's what we were talking about. Is that it's possible that once JavaScript loads, like it could intercept and just stop, which is actually in some ways maybe another advantage too. It's like that JavaScript file loads real quick. I don't know how it would be able to like,
Yeah, that's
a really hard thing to interrupt.
There's a little hand waviness to how you switch to the real app.
Theoretically, it's possible if like you had the state machines like we're doing the same kind of thing, right? Essentially, you would eventually know that your state machine is at the point that the server-side state machine must have been at. Like you could theoretically, here's what you could do. You could theoretically keep your logs because you know the logs that are coming, and once your logs match, switch, you've gotten to the same place. There. Hands are down. That's actually a pretty good solution. That is a good solution, right? You have the logs that the client-side stash is making in the background, and if that matched, you're done. Flip that point, and then just stash is over. Somehow you'd want to say, "Hey, server, die." I don't know if you can kill the stream because that would be really cool. That would be amazing. So hopefully people's minds blown. Anyways, it's cool. I think this might be one of the first. We might be. I don't know if anybody else is working on this right now, but my hope is that makes a huge impact, like in terms of performance. The biggest advantage for all of this is actually none of this like streaming LIs from the database. The biggest thing is that our server-side rendering can get out your link tags in your head right away, so you can start downloading CSS while the database theoretically is still getting, pulling records. And that's the win. Is that the page load time should be much faster because of that. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's really cool. Good luck this weekend, both of you.
Yeah. So that's it for me.
Cool.
That's my topic.
Cool. Anyone have anything before? I've got a couple of topics that I want to go through real quick. Nope. Okay, cool. Let me share my screen.
I should say big thanks to Matthew for doing all this. I know I just did all the talking, but it's me and Matthew formulating all of this.
Yeah. Awesome.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I have a couple of quick issues. So we did Kevin put out a 0.4 release of Sin, and we're gonna. Oh, this is not what I wanted. Sorry. Oh, I don't have. Sorry, I thought I had the right issue links. So there's a new release of Sin. I have a PR to update FuncUnit. One thing that I don't know Sin, or I don't know FuncUnit well enough, is to know whether a minor version bump in Sin should result in a minor version bump in FuncUnit, or if minor bumps in Sin are can be bug fixes in FuncUnit.
I think FunkUnit has its own API.
Okay, so it would be just a
Distinct.
patch.
I guess it would only be if like you added a feature and like I could see if sin, if you said like, okay, we added a new, there's like you can say hold command or caps lock or stuff like that, right? If you added something like that in sin that could percolate up to FunkUnit, then yeah, it should be a minor release in both.
So this is the changelog for sin. So maybe you can tell me whether you think adding pointer and touch events for
can FunkUnit like directly, can I like using FunkUnit's API use any of that?
I don't know
I don't think so.
FunkUnit
I'm
well
guessing
enough.
no. Well, you'd have to tell me a little bit more, but we can talk about it later. And just from that, I don't know because I have to see like.
So for clicks and stuff, you now get additional events depending on what your browser natively supports.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, it's a minor release then. Yeah, it should be a minor release.
Okay.
Because it changes the behavior. Like it's doing kind of new things. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. So one thing I've been sorting out this week is almost all of our, well, let me back up. So the DoneJS plugin generator, I have did I not link? Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong links. Okay, so the DoneJS plugin generator right now, out of the box, if you create a project and publish it to npm, the dist folder for the plugin is included in the tagged release, which is what is under the releases in GitHub. But dist is not included in the package that's published to npm, which is a problem because all of the plugin, like how to use it, includes, if you install it, then you'll be able to see the dist folder. So I've been trying to figure out the correct way of fixing it. And right now, the best thing that I've been able to figure out is changing our post version script to post publish because of the way versioning within, like when you run npm version and npm publish, how that process works. npm automatically makes the commit and the tag for the version, and it does that before it makes the change, it bumps the package.json version before version runs, and then it makes the commit before post version. So what was happening is that the like versioned commit that npm would make was let me back up. What was happening was the version bump was going into this update dist for release commit, and then the actual dist folder was being added to the version number commit that npm was making, which is actually the opposite of what should have been happening. And the best thing that I've been able to figure out is just that we changed the commit message for the version bump, and then we changed the post version to a post publish script, so that the dist folder is both in the tagged release and in the release that's published to. I don't know if anyone else knows npm's versioning and publishing system better to be able to figure out a better fix for this, or if anyone has feedback, but that's something that I've worked on this week that has been a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at it like, some other time.
Yeah.
Redigest.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. I kind of outlined the previous steps and what I think they should be, and then I opened an issue in the DoneJS plugin generator for fixing this, and I added it to the 1.0 release so we can get this in our major version release. So we'll probably talk about that next week. I don't know if I was hoping someone might know npm's versioning and publishing scripts a little bit better to make a better solution, but
I do not. Sorry.
Okay. Cool. So we went through those, and the last thing that I just wanted to mention was that I created these issues for adding issue and pull request templates to our repos, and for adding contributing contributing.md files for our repos. And I have lists of basically all of the repos. This isn't something that I'm going to be working on my own time, or this is something that I'm going to be working on my own time. And if anyone wants, really easy contributions, these are really easy to add a couple of files to the repos in the case of the issue and pull request templates, and it's maybe a little bit more involved for the contributing files. But I just wanted to put it out there that I've opened up these issues. Cool. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Those are all the topics I had. Did anyone have anything else before we go? Nope. Cool. All right. So that concludes the our contributors meeting for today. Thank you for everyone who's watching on the live stream or on YouTube after the fact. Thanks, guys, for showing up, and see you next week.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.